Hi, everyone. I'm so excited to see you and be with you today. I'm really looking forward to talking to you about how we can transform our bodies by loving ourselves. Just a little bit of how I'd love for today to go. I'm going to talk a little bit about my story, share some of my lessons and learnings throughout my process, share a lot about how joy was helpful for that, and just share like the behind the scenes of how to transform our body by loving it. And then we'll go to Q&A. We'll have Melissa join me just to make sure we have that expert advice and opinion. And so if you want any information from a doctor's perspective, we've got you covered there as well. And just for a second, I would love if we could just kind of like just take 1 second just to kind of ground in our bodies a little bit, just kind of getting us here in this moment on this Friday. So even just closing our eyes for just 30 seconds, putting our hand on our heart or somewhere on our body, it can be helpful just to reconnect with the body as our day is going, as our day has started, and just saying hello to ourselves. Getting out of the mind for just a second and reconnecting in, feeling the body slow down and regulate. And just taking 3 deep breaths in, deep breath in through the nose into the belly, sighing it out. Deep breath in through the nose, sigh it out. And one more, just making it dramatic, giving yourself permission here. Deep breath in through the nose and sighing it out. Just kind of stretching out, just moving the body in as we kind of come back. Come back into this moment together. Looking forward to spending the next hour together. So if you don't know who I am, my name is Krista Williams. I am the host and founder of a podcast called Almost 30. I started it in 2016 with my best friend. And it was when I was almost 30. It was when I was in that journey and that process of really feeling super lost in life. I was in the corporate world. I hated my job. I hated the relationship I was in. I pretty much hated everything and really didn't know who I was. But I knew that I was here for a bigger purpose. I knew I was here for more. And so through that process, I met my best friend and co-host, and we started a podcast that became one of the biggest health and wellness podcasts, that became one of the biggest spirituality podcasts. And through that journey, I've been given access to amazing teachers and healers and experts in the space. And so I've learned quite a bit about health and wellness, about spirituality, and then on my own path as a teacher, as a coach, as a speaker now. On that journey of starting almost 30 and even coming to joy, just for background on my relationship to my body and sort of how I got to this place where now I'm speaking about the body. I'm someone that really struggled with the relationship to my body. I have hated my body most of my life. My mom had a bad relationship to her body. My all the women I saw in my life had bad relationships to their body. It was very socialized in the way that I grew up in the Midwest. I grew up in a small town in Ohio, to have shame around your body, to hate how you look, to count calories, to diet pill, to, just constantly spend all of my time and energy on what I wanted to do to change myself and why my life would be so much better if I lost 5 pounds, if I lost 15 pounds, if I got abs, if I had thinner arms, or whatever the things were. So most of my life was not only consumed with my deep desire to find my purpose and become this person that in my mind I knew I could be, but also this hate for myself and this disdain for the body that I was in. It was never thin enough. It was never good enough. And it was just this constant conversation within my mind. And I don't know if you guys can relate to that. So I'd love to hear in the chat, what's relating and sort of how this is sitting for you, because I want to make sure that this is interactive and this is impactful and this is supportive. And I can go as vulnerable as you want. And I know that for the body stuff, it can be helpful because for a lot of us, this internal dialogue we have about our body is running all the time. And for me, most of my life, I didn't even realize it was going on. I didn't really know that there was this second voice of, you shouldn't eat that, or that's 200 calories. That means we only have 1,000 left for the day. And then you can't eat this or you can't have that. Or if you want to look good Friday, you have to do this. And it was almost like this mental chess and checkers, just moving calories around, moving workouts around, moving numbers and weight around constantly in my mind. and spending so much of my energy just making this game of losing more weight or being in a better body or being in a more fit body or being in a body that I loved and felt good in. And there was a moment when I was in my 20s and I moved to New York City to be with my then husband. And I remember taking a really good set of diet pills and just working out all the time, eating only Quest bars. I don't know if you guys were on the Quest bar train. That was like my full nutrition scope was Quest bars. It was I got an allergy to them. I was eating them so much. And I remember getting on the scale one day and being the thinnest I had ever been. And I was like, oh my God, I'm the thinnest I had ever been, like da 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 da. And I sat on the floor and I just had this awakening where I was like, I am no happier. I'm no happier. I'm no more vital. I'm no more fulfilled. I'm no more aligned. I'm no more myself. And I actually had the second thought of 5 pounds more. How could I go 5 pounds more? Because when the goal is never reached, when we have this insane number or goal or idea, or we're never enough, the never enoughness is the core thing, we're never going to get there. We're never going to get to a place where we love ourselves or accept ourselves. And that's actually the point. The part of us that wants us to change and wants us to lose weight or be thinner or be more fit or whatever, if we are not working with that voice and understanding that voice will keep us on the treadmill for our entire lives. And I had realized in that moment that there was a voice within me that was keeping me on this rat race and this treadmill my entire life. And that was actually not my voice. And when I talk about this, what I'm talking about is something that I practice and teach called internal family systems, and it's parts work. So internal family systems is a tool that you guys can actually use after this today. You can, take it and use it in your life. It's a psychotherapy technique invented by someone named Richard Schwartz. He has a really great book called No Bad Parts. And basically, he discovered that in his practice working with people with eating disorders, that there was oftentimes a few conversations happening. So he would sit in front of his clients or employees, and he would realize that there would be one part of them that knew all the things, that knew how to lose weight, that knew the calorie count, that knew that they had to work out more and eat less, and wanted to lose the weight and wanted to be good and wanted to, do these things. And so many of us have those parts, the parts that's here today. It might be the part that's like, I'm going to learn the thing that's going to change my body and change my life, and here I go. And then there's the other part that can sometimes sabotage what we're trying to do. This could often be seen in a binging and purging dynamic, or even a binging dynamic, or the part of us that's like making us overeat or eat sweets or not sleep in or, do all the bad things that we know are not necessarily good for us. And until we are able to see these parts and make peace with these parts and realize that there's a soul within us and there's a true self, the most loving aspect of ourselves, the most expansive, powerful aspects of ourselves, we cannot be in a body that we love because we're not in our truth. And what I believe in the deepest part of my soul is that we are so much more than a number on a scale. We are so much more than our weight and our bodies. And we are so much more than just counting calories and figuring out workouts and figuring out the green juices and figuring out all the supplements. We are a soul that exists. We are a soul that is existing here on earth that is meant to do such big things. And yes, of course, the supplements, the routines, the practices, the mindfulness is going to help us be able to experience that soul in such a beautiful way. But really getting in touch with the truth of who we are, not the voices in our head that tell us we're not enough, is the key that really helps us to accept ourselves in order to transform. So back to my little journey, I was in New York and I lost the weight and I realized I wasn't any more happy. I continued on my path and was still struggling. I moved to Los Angeles during that time and had really bad hormonal health issues and gained like 30 pounds. So my adrenals were shot, the diet pills were no longer working. I was in a body that I was really uncomfortable in. It was just really uncomfortable to be me. And I just got to a point where I just realized I had to accept myself for where I was, and that if I wasn't going to accept myself when I was thin, I needed to figure out a way to accept myself in that journey. And that's when I discovered the parts work. And that's when I really got to realize and see that the voice within me that was telling me I wasn't enough, no matter what I weighed or no matter what I looked like, the voice within me that was strategizing around eating and working out and supplements and all of these things was never going to be satisfied with how I looked, and that I needed to make peace with that voice and come to the truth of who I was. That I was bigger than that, I was better than that, I was more loving than that, and I was more worthy than that. For many of us, oftentimes the voice of the inner critic, the voice that we're talking about here, and from a parts perspective, can be the part of our mother or our father, the critical person in our life. For me, that was my mother, who was very critical about weight and body. And that voice can sort of follow us in our lives until we're conscious of it, until we're seeing, like, what is this voice telling me to do? Like, what is this unconscious program where every morning I wake up and I check and see if my stomach's flat? Or every morning I walk by the mirror and just like check to see what my body looks like. Or every morning I check to see if my clothes feel looser. Or every morning I automatically get on the scale. How can we bring conscious awareness to these practices that we're doing and check in to see if they're supporting us in our goals of greater self-love, or they're getting us further away from ourselves? Because for most of us, if we're doing these programs, if we're taking the supplements, the ultimate goal is to love ourselves more deeply, to accept ourselves more deeply, to become the best version of ourselves. And that includes looking really good. That includes feeling really vital and youthful in our bodies. I can't say that in feeling more beautiful or vital or vivacious or having all the support of the supplements from Joy has not been incredibly helpful, but it's been just as supportive as really accepting myself for who I am and where I'm at in my path and in my journey. And until we're able to really see the voice of the inner critic clearly, and maybe even see the voice of the part of us that sabotages, kind of pull it away from ourselves and get clear, we're not really going to be able to accept ourselves, even if we're in the body of our dreams. Because this voice of the inner critic always has more. This voice is never enough. Even if you get to the weight, even if you get to the money amount, even if you get to whatever, it's never going to be satisfied. And that's why we hear the tale as old as time with people that are very wealthy is they'll make $1 million and then they want to make 10 million, and then they make 10 million and they want to make 1 billion. Because until we really, really see what is driving this voice in us that is never satisfied, fear, acquaintance to losing weight to being loved, being thin to being loved, being beautiful to being loved, being rich to being loved. And until this part of us knows that it is loved no matter what, that we are loved no matter what we look like, we are accepted no matter what we look like, it's still going to be running the show in a way that's never going to allow us to be happy or satisfied, until in a way that's never going to allow us to feel at peace. I want to just give a little breath for that and just check the chat for a second, because I know it's a lot. Bianca says, I'm so conscious of the practices and that voice is not mine, but it's so habitual and so hard to break those ways of doing it after 30 years of living this way. Totally hear you. And I'm curious if that resonates for you guys. And the way that I see this is that the voice that we have, that, Bianca's saying is not hers. It's not a problem. This part of us, this inner critic, just has the incorrect belief that you have to be thin to be loved, or beautiful to be loved, or your body has to look a certain way to be loved. And so the way that I like to work is by having a conversation with that part, that little girl in me, and saying, tell me more. How are you feeling? I hear you. I accept you. What is the belief that you hold, that you have to be thin to be loved? Well, I want to let you know that I love you no matter what. This is inner child work. I love this part of me no matter what you look like. And I'm going to take the burden from you that makes you think that you have to tell me all day that I'm not enough. And I'm going to let you know that we're enough. We're all good. So when we do, this is inner child work too, because we're kind of becoming the inner parent. We're becoming the inner authority within our system of like, hey guys, actually, we're going to do all the beautiful things with Joy. We're going to work out. We're going to eat well. We're going to sleep well. And we're going to accept ourselves along the way. We don't need to be bullying ourselves, wanting to change ourselves, hating ourselves the entire time through the process. You cannot hate yourself into loving yourself. That is the whole thing. You actually have to, in the process of changing and transforming, learn to love yourself, or you will never love yourself once you get to the destination. That is the whole thing. And I know loving yourself is such a hard thing. I know it's so nebulous. And I know before I understood the concept, when people would say that, I'd be like, shut up. I don't know what you're talking about. But when you could just see every experience that you're having, even the part of you that's like, dude, I want to lose 10 pounds. I don't care what you have to say, lady. Just be like, yep, love that voice, love that doubt, love that fear, love the part of me that's really excited about changing my body and transforming. the part of me that's really motivated. I even love the voice in me that's been bullying me because I know that she's scared. I know that she's scared that she will be abandoned if she doesn't look a certain way, or if she's not smart, or if she's not rich, or whatever the beliefs are. Take
I'll
that burden.
sometimes, I'll sometimes tell people to like flip that. Is that your subconscious telling you, hey, you've not been sleeping great. Hey, you've not like, where do we need to focus to get back on track too?
Yeah, 100%. The voice of the critic, the inner critic, it's not always bad. It's just dysfunctional. That's what I like to say. It's working a little too hard to get our attention. And when we can actually listen to it and pay attention to it in a way that's regulated, then we can get the wisdom from the inner critic rather than like have that hate relationship with them. So it could be like the inner critic's like, hey, you need to do this, you need to do that. And it's like, okay, if we're listening, we're like, hey, actually, that's a really good idea. I'm not going to look at my phone past 8 p.m. Great idea. We can get the wisdom and medicine from that. Lindsay says, take the burden. It makes me emotional. Yeah, the concept of the burden I really love. And this is a concept from parts work and internal family systems. And the way that you guys can see it is that there's little parts of us, like a little girl or a younger version, that are dysfunctionally holding the burden of feeling like they have to tell you to lose weight or change your body or transform or whatever to be happy. So these parts of us, like, I'll say my example. My mom said that her biggest fear for being a mother was that her children would be fat. And I laugh when I say that because it's so psychotic. And there was other things that were said, through my childhood, whatever. So if you're a little girl, the brain development of a child is recording. I don't have the conscious awareness of a 30-year-old. I'm not 30, but of a 30-year-old at that point. So my brain as a 5-year-old is just recording. Mom says children need to be thin to be loved. Great. Recording, recording, recording. So I have that belief recording in my life. So there's a little girl in me that's running from a neural pathway perspective that's telling me my entire life I need to be thin to be loved. So when we can really sit with her and be like, hey, girl, I see you, I hear you. That's actually not true. This is when we become conscious, the inner mother. We can take the burden from her of feeling like she has to tell me constantly that I need to be thin to be loved. Hey, little girl, you don't need to do that anymore. The inner mother is here. We got this. We can actually transform by loving ourselves. Yeah, scars your subconscious for years, reflecting that this mindset, this voice served a purpose for me at some point in our lives. Yep, but overcoming these limiting beliefs is how I know I leveled up. Yep, almost for sure, work in progress, thinking the same way. Yep, beautiful. Um, and so just kind of bringing forward, so in my journey, my story, gained the weight, had to learn to figure out how to love myself. I talked to you guys about doing that through parts work. That took a long time. And to be honest, I remember one time crossing the floor in my old apartment with my ex and being like, you know what? I'm going to hate my body for my entire life. And that's just kind of how it is. It was like this weird acceptance where I was like, yeah, this is going to be my entire life in this prison. And I remember having a dinner with my mom one time and I asked her about her body. I was like, how do you feel about your relationship to your body? And she's like, I've always seen food as a threat. And I was like, whoa, that was profound, to see food as a threat. And when I accepted that I would have this thought pattern, was actually gave it the space to shift and change and gave me the space to approach it differently with the parts work. And what brought me to joy and what brought me to the process of the transformation that I've been on in the past 2 years was going through a divorce. So I was with my partner for 10 years. And I remember at the end of our marriage, I was so out of sorts that I almost was so focused on my internal landscape and healing from the divorce and kind of that conversation that it took up so much of my energy that the body conversation sort of subsided. And I don't know if you guys have ever had that too, but if ever in life there's things that you're struggling with, sometimes they can be so prevalent in the pain that you can kind of forget about the body. And I remember there were certain periods in my life where I was in so much pain mentally that I forgot about my body and it actually felt freeing for me, where that voice was like kind of quiet. So that voice was kind of quiet for a little bit. And that was when I really started to deepen the work with it. And I was like, you know what? I want to really find a way to feel radiant and feel more like myself and really step into an experience of being my best self. And I didn't know what that meant. And I didn't know what that would feel like texturally, but I knew that there was an option and an opportunity. And when I found Joy and we started to work together and I started to experiment with peptides and experiment with some of their supplements and experiment with all the things that were really taking me to a new level in addition to the work I had been doing on my own. It was like this beautiful transformation that I never thought was actually possible. I didn't have clarity on the actual vision. It wasn't like I was looking at a picture of someone else or a picture in a magazine or an Instagram picture or and no one else was my vision board. No one else was my goal. Nothing. It was me in the best version of me with a loving version of me and being accepting of me as the goal rather than like anyone else or anything or any idea that parts of me had. It was like an unknown unvision of like just the most loving version of me that I could experience. Let me just look at the comments too. I started on the healing of the body first, and it led me to a place where I recognized the need to heal the mind because without that, the body would never feel. Yeah. So I'll just say just a few more things and we can kind of transition with Melissa and the questions are related to the body and the mind. So thoughts are things, thoughts create our reality. So as much as we would love to be like, I'm going to work out every day and I'm going to eat this food, the energy of the food that we're consuming and how we feel when we're consuming it impacts how the food is digested, how the food is assimilated in our body. There's actually there was this study that was done a few years ago, and it was actually they were testing cholesterol, like high cholesterol foods on animals, which I hate. But they were feeding these animals, both these two sets of animals, the control group and this other group, this really, really shitty food. And they, in the testing, realized that both animals actually had the same results and that the really shitty food wasn't impacting the animals that were being fed it. And they looked at the video footage, and it was because the person that was feeding them was like petting them and loving them and hanging out with them. And so the fact that it was loving them into the experience of their food actually being digested and assimilated differently into the body proves that the way that we take in food and the way that we are with food can actually enhance the experience and the nutritional benefits of our food. But if your mind too is also taking you out of your body, taking you out of the food experience when you're in it, you're never going to enjoy the food or be with the food. And I think that's what happens when I see a lot of the women that I work with is like, if you have that mind of the wanting to be perfect, wanting to change your body, wanting to all these things, never being satisfied, you're going to sit down in front of a meal and there's going to be a part of your mind, at least there was a part of my mind that was like, I shouldn't be eating this. I need to eat this fast because I'm going to feel guilty or shameful. And it's only a matter of time. I don't want people to see me eat because I feel gross or I feel like I'm not worthy of food. And there's also the belief of I wasn't worthy of nourishment because I didn't have a relationship with a mother who was nourishing me. So there's a lot of thoughts that can also come up around food in the body that impact how your body relates to food and how your body assimilates and digests food. So the mind for me is the most important part of changing your body and weight loss and transformation. It's everything. It's not only the experience of what your body is relating to or the messages your body is getting, but it is also the experience of being in our body. Like, sure, we can have a really hot, sexy body, but if you don't enjoy it or love it or like to be in it or, love the experience of feeling vital and beautiful and vivacious, it's like, what's the point? Like, there's no actual point to that. So the mind is definitely for me the most important aspect of this. And I do think that the supplements and having the blood work and everything like that is such a beautiful aspect of the planning and the strategy and doing things in the 3D, but we can't really overlook the importance of the mind. Trisha says, removed the word bad to relationship to food and replaced it good, better, and best. Yeah, I love that. Yeah, beautiful. Okay. So I'm going to pause and I know we have a lot of questions and we have some conversation that I want to have. If there's any points that you guys need clarification on or want more examples or want me to share more, I'm happy to. I know this can be a lot of information, especially if we're talking about a new concept in parts work. And I'm happy to also talk about if you guys want more about my journey with Joy and sort of my blood testing and everything that I've done from that perspective because it's been so incredibly helpful. When I got my blood tested maybe a year and a half ago, I just, you know, having clarity on the things that I actually needed to do versus the things that I saw other influencers doing and got influenced by was insane. And now getting my blood tested like a month ago, seeing how much of an improvement I had had just because I was focused on the things that were important to me was actually just like such a beautiful thing. So if you work with Joy or don't, like I think it's such a important aspect of our health journey to get specific on the things that actually matter to us individually for our body and things that we can actually do to support ourselves in the process of also reprogramming our relationship with our mind. Sterling asked, what stuff came up in your initial blood work that you worked to transform? So in my initial blood work, my hormones were completely, all of them were flat. I had adrenal fatigue for so long with my hormone journey that I didn't really have much testosterone, progesterone, estrogen, and my cortisol was flat. So I didn't really have much going on hormonally. So with that, we worked on adding DHEA, which is a building block for hormones. Melissa probably can talk more about it. A building block for hormones in addition to vitamin D so that my body could create its own hormones naturally. I was also really dehydrated, which was very weird. So I was very dehydrated. I had very low vitamin B, vitamin D. I had very high white blood cell count because I had an allergy and an inflammation to a certain type of food. And my thyroid was pretty underactive. And through the process of my year with Joy, my hormones are like thriving. I'm now hydrated, great vitamin B levels, vitamin D levels. Like I feel like I was like, I am the part of me that wants to get a good grade was like, we're doing great. That really, she was like, yes, we really did it.
Krista, has diet changed since you started with Joy? Like, had you
That's a
already been on a nutritional journey before Joy?
Yeah, that's a great question that I'm glad that you asked because in my journey being in the health and wellness space, I've had access to every single diet that you guys could ever hear about or know about. And also before that, I've tried all of them, like grapefruit, Weight Watchers, whatever. I tried vegan keto, I tried raw, like I tried all of them. And when I started working with Joy, one of my best friends is Jessie, Glucose Goddess, and I just heard from her, and then even in our work, it was like, how can I prioritize protein? So protein is my number one priority, and then low sugar is my second priority. I don't really worry about fat and carbs, but I kind of really focus on that. And by really decreasing my sugar and my diet, it helped me not only regulate my cravings
Mhm.
and the way that I related to food, because I realized before a lot of my food addiction and obsession was because I was eating hyper palatable foods that were very sugar laden, which wasn't supporting me in having my mind right around food. So reducing the sugar and increasing the protein was super, super helpful for me. That helped quite a bit. Also for me, removing peanut butter, dude, the way that I would eat peanut butter was psychotic. And so just removing some like hyper palatable addictive foods from my diet also really, really helped. But yeah, that was some of the changes that I made just from the highest level.
And that question, so everybody knows, that question for me came from a lot of what she was mentioning as being off in her panel, suggested that gut health wasn't great.
Good one.
So that's where my question came from. And I, from a practitioner standpoint, my first conversation with gals is, well, how much protein are you getting? Let's start there. Like I don't care what kind of diet you subscribe to, don't subscribe to. If you're counting protein, that's the only counting I ever want any of my gals to do.
Yeah, I love that, Melissa, because I think for a lot of the people joining, we're so used to the mindset around food and diet being remove, subtract, get
Yep,
rid of. And
yep,
I do love that around protein, where it is always like, what is an additive? How can we add more? How can we focus on more? And when we
yep.
have that expansive mindset or that abundance mindset around food, it changes how we view things completely. So I do highly suggest, I'd say I have around 100 grams a day, maybe 120 if I'm, really
Good
cruising,
day.
but it's been the most helpful for blood sugar regulation, for building muscle, also having the Samorlin. I've been taking Samorlin with Joy for a long time now, and that's helped me transform as far as building muscle and burning fat in the body. That has been like a huge, huge combination.
Yep, I agree. I mean, I tell most of my gals, I want you on a minimum of 100 grams of protein a day.
Hmm. Hmm.
And protein should be the first thing you have before you have a cup of coffee, any of those sorts of things. Blood sugar balance becomes so critical.
100%. One of my new favorite sources of protein is a protein bar called David's. And I know David's
Oh,
isn't,
yeah.
is it good? I like protein bars are not like everyone's favorite source, but it
Yep,
has 30 grams of protein, 150 calories, really clean ingredients.
they're really
Um,
good.
they're so good. And what I like about them is they're not hyper palatable. Sometimes protein bars are so palatable, I want like 12.
Yep,
So like you eat one and I'm like, I am
I'm
fine.
full. I'm
Yeah.
good. I don't need three more of these.
Literally, it's like I'm complete.
Yep, like a
Um,
thick crunch. I could probably sit down and eat three of them in a sitting because it's
oh, I
like a
can't.
Reese's peanut butter cup.
That was my problem too when I was binging with food, was that the binge part of me said, well, it's healthy. So I would binge healthy food. I would have like 12 protein bars a day or two, So the mind can get tricky with that. So being able to like have that work was helpful. Um, just Lindsay asked, did the mindset change because you embraced the critical parts? Like, do they still pop up when you relate with that voice in a loving way? That's a great question. So when I embraced the critical parts of me and learned that they were just doing what they knew best to love me, as an example, that little girl that is constantly like, girl, we need to lose weight, we need to be thin, da 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 da. When I realized that she had heard from a young age that her mom, her source of life, would only love her and accept her if she was thin, I was like, "Oh girl, you've been trying to help me this whole time. Like I see you. I'm grateful for you. I love you." And so I can still hear her voice, but I have a different relationship with it. An example would be over the holidays, I was home and I was like just kind of at home with family and I heard a voice that was like, You should do a fast." It's like you should do a fast, 3 to 5 day fast. That's a good idea. And I just kind of what I do now is I just kind of pull back. I'm like, okay, because I've fasted before for spiritual reasons. It's really beautiful for cellular autophagy. I mean, Melissa knows so much about it, but it's actually a really beautiful practice that I like to do when I feel spiritually called, not like the diet part of me is calling. So I can be like, okay, like what's that? And I looked at it, and it was like me being around my mom so much that I was kind of like having like an episode of like we need to control our food. And I'm like, okay. I appreciate the idea. Like, I love you, but we're not going to do that right now if it feels good in the future. So, to answer your question, it's pulling apart from those ideas and opinions and just kind of looking at it critically with loving eyes, seeing how that part of you is trying to help you, even though sometimes it can feel painful, and then having a different relationship with it where you're the one in charge, yourself, your inner mother, your inner parent, whatever that is, rather than these dysfunctional parts, the limiting beliefs, the critical aspects of you.
Krista can speak here too, but the work on yourself is never done. There's always something. I'll do a lot of the similar like childhood work, and I'll tell patients, go back, have a conversation with 2-year-old you. Once you felt like you've loved on 2-year-old you enough, keep going because there may have been a traumatic event at 12 that really threw a different mindset at you that you haven't yet identified. So just keep going through. And I tell patients, and I say this a lot with my husband too, sit in it. Just sit in it, feel the emotions, and you'll work through it and you'll know when you're through it and when you can just keep moving forward.
Yeah, I think I love that, the sitting in it. And I think it's giving me pause because I just think about my clients and when I can see someone sit with themselves through that discomfort of wanting to run, wanting to reach for food, wanting to reach for the phone, wanting to reach for an addiction to avoid the feeling, the overwhelm of feeling, the feeling like, if you feel depressed or anxious and you just have that, you're like terrified to allow yourself to feel fully. But if you can walk yourself through that, or you can actually sit with yourself in the fullness of your emotions, when you come out on the other side, you're just transformed. Like if you don't run from yourself, you're just transformed. And I know it's challenging, but that type of energy of, I'm going to sit with this rather than run or reach for food or try and change myself. It just changes your whole life, truly.
I know we've got a question here about Samorlin, but I say this far more often to my ladies than I do my gals, but give yourself the grace. Like it's a blessing to be alive. Your body has a menstrual cycle. Maybe it's had kids. It's going to go through menopause. Like those are miraculous feats.
Mhm.
And instead of being frustrated or upset with them, embrace them because of what you get to do. You get to be here. You get to be alive. Give yourself the grace. If who cares if you had 50 grams of protein? Guess what? Tomorrow is another opportunity to do better, to love yourself more, just to do different.
I love that. I think been helpful for me is like exactly that voice and approaching myself with like humor and jest. So it's like if I just hit 15 grams of protein, I'm like, dang it, I hit 15 grams. And it's like, how can I just bring lightness and levity into things instead of being like, oh my God, 50 grams? It's like, dude, who cares? Like, it's like bringing humor and lightness and levity to your imperfections and to you being a human being is
Yep,
just massive. Like, it's not, it's okay.
it's okay.
So
Okay,
the,
so
go ahead.
Samorlin, troches versus injections. Um, I'm always going to tell you that injections are going to be more effective generally than a troche, but I always use the line with patients, what's effective is what you're willing to use. Like if you hate injections and the difference is between no Samorlin and an oral version, go the oral version. Do what fits for your lifestyle and what makes sense for you.
Yeah, I did. I think I've only done the trochees for Samorlin. Um, I think I've done it. I think I've been doing it for a year now. I will do it 3 months on, a month off. I will do it 3 to 5 days a week. I'd say maybe 5 days a week and then 2 days off.
Yep.
So, I'll like make sure to take breaks. So like I'll do it for like sprints where I'm like, I'm home, I'm really working out, I'm like really in my flow. And then sometimes I travel and I like will kind of stop when I travel just because I won't work out as much. And you don't have to do this at all in the way that I am, but I kind of like to have my routine and my flow with it. But I've definitely taken breaks from it. But it's been something that I have been really, really impressed by and how I've been able to build muscle. And I really didn't know that was a missing component, because I've been working out for, you know, I've been working out for a really long time and I'd done all the classes and stuff and I had kind of been like doing bar and hit workouts, but changing to Samorlin and then giving on a heavy weightlifting routine. I was always afraid of weightlifting. Everyone always says that, but now I lift like 3 days a week pretty heavy consistently at the gym and I don't do classes all over has really helped to transform, my body in a way that feels more comfortable, more lean, more toned, and just more strong.
Yep. Samorlin is a human growth hormone analog, so it helps support normal human growth hormone levels, which can help with sleep, lean muscle repair, recovery. So a lot of times we'll first start thinking of it from a sleep perspective, but just a general overall, it's great from an anti-aging perspective as well.
Yeah.
Necessary to take breaks from Samorlin. That is the big, great debate. It depends. So you will have some people who will take Samorlin continuously, meaning 7 days out of the week. If you're doing that, then yes, because you can get receptor fatigue in the body, and over time it will become less effective. Now, I am just like Krista. I take my growth hormone, except I do 6 months on with 1 month off, 5 days a week, 2 days off. But like her, if I'm going to be traveling, I'm going to skip this week and it'll be an easy week to take a little break. So I don't, it's not like, oh, I set the timer for month 6 and I've got to take my break. But you'll also see people do the 3 month cycle with a 2 to 4 week break as well. It's just, it kind of is what fits with your body. I do an injectable. So sometimes I get needle fatigue and need the break from that perspective. But again, that's kind of where make it work with, if it's right for you, make it work with what works for your lifestyle.
Mhm. Beautiful.
I see we've got a question here on intermittent fasting. I hate it because most of the gals on here are perimenopausal. So cortisol, stress hormone. I know everybody hears that word and they're like, oh my God, like, how do I manage my stress? Well, there are stressors we can control and those that we can't control. Cortisol is what keeps us full overnight. So it typically spikes somewhere between 1 and 3 o'clock in the morning. And so we're not waking up for that Taco Bell fourth meal in the middle of the night. What happens when you intermittent fast is you invite cortisol to the table. It's why I tell you no caffeine before protein in the morning. Like when you wake up in the morning, you should be eating, putting physical food in your body within 60 to 90 minutes. Otherwise, what you've done is said, hey, cortisol, come to the table with me. And the longer you fast, the higher you can drive your cortisol levels. Cortisol is the great masquerader, like I call it. Weight gain, poor sleep, acne, irregular periods, irritability, like the inflammation, blood sugar imbalance. So there's the symptoms you can see and the symptoms you can't see, which is why you'll hear me say just protein, protein, protein. What increases cortisol? Not having a regular bedtime, not getting enough vitamin D, and not enough protein. It's what you eat, when you eat, how you eat, being dehydrated, caffeine, alcohol. So I know there are things in life like I can't get rid of the fact that I've got kids, a job, a husband. Like I love them. They're a great component. Doesn't mean that they're not a stressor. So for me, bedtime, I don't compromise on bedtime. I'm always in bed within an hour of a normal time. I get up at the same time. I don't over exercise. I was the girl who was super proud. I worked out 6 days a week. I did hit. I ran 4 miles. And it was amazing how much better my body felt when I went for a walk instead of a 4 mile run, when I picked up the weights and did those things. And I gave myself, like, I haven't been to the gym since Sunday. My body is just telling me right now, hey, it's not for us. You need to prioritize your sleep. So I'm sitting in those moments to listen to what do I need. And I'm not allowing myself to beat myself up over that because I'm listening to what my body needs.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my very long answer to intermittent fasting. Like I just tend to not love it. Your body's meant to be nourished. Feed it,
Mm-hmm.
whether that's nutritionally, spiritually, physically, listen to it and give it what it needs.
Yeah, I'd love just the highest level note of how are we using outside influence to determine what we should be doing with our bodies or what we should be doing, where it's like, okay, so some random thing is telling me that intermittent fasting, tells me to eat from 12 to 6 or whatever the window is. And I think we, especially as women or anyone listening, it's like the best results that we will have for ourselves in our lives in general and for our body is going to be led by our intuitive signals from our body, led by our soul, led by the voice within us. And so I used to intermittent fast, I think, a bit. And then when I did come on the journey of really listening to my body intuitively and being like, okay, what do I actually need or want? It just fell off because it wasn't a fit for me. I actually love to eat breakfast, ate breakfast at like 6 a.m. Sometimes I'll eat dinner at like 3 p.m. Sometimes I'll eat dinner like it's just kind of intuitively moving and going with the flow rather than having something outside of me dictate what I should be doing because that's what I had been doing my whole life. I should eat keto, I should eat low fat, I should eat high carb, I should do all these things. I was like, no more of that. Like what do you actually need? What is actually required for me in my body right now?
Mhm.
Ooh, the iron. Great question. What do you think about that, Melissa?
So it's not a specific iron test through Joy, but we do markers that would suggest if there are deficiencies there that would cause us to look further.
Seems to be big. That's interesting. I didn't know it was a component to losing weight.
Inflammation. You can increase inflammation when iron levels are low.
Really?
And you don't typically then have enough energy stores. So when you do feed your body says, oop, I need to hold on to this because I need it for fuel.
Wow. What would you say? What would you tell someone that was nervous to take hormones? What would be side effects you're aware of?
So it depends on what we're talking about, but I will generally tell people there's hormones in your body now. I always look at hormone replacement in the sense of vitamin D. If vitamin D was low, there things like could you go sit outside? Yes, that's not always convenient. I'm in the Midwest too. Like it's 30 degrees outside. There's no way I'm going to strip down to a bikini or a swimsuit and sit outside and get some vitamin D right now. So I always think of hormone replacement. Like if vitamin D is low, I'm going to take some supplementation and do the measures that I can to help naturally support that.
Mhm.
Hormones are the same way. It should absolutely be thought of the same way. I'm not going to ever treat anybody above and beyond to this wild, crazy level, but you're meant to naturally have hormones, just like you're meant to go through menopause. But it doesn't mean that we can't support it in those ways too. Side effects, yes, those are kind of going to depend on which we're talking about. Like testosterone can have an increase in acne, facial hair, increase in clitoral size, but those are all dosing dependent. So at a right dose, you should actually get improvements in energy, focus, concentration, libido, muscle tone, joint pain, sleep, mood, inflammation. Estrogen, we could spend a whole hour talking about estrogen and all the negatives from that perspective. Estrogen is what typically causes those menopausal symptoms, hot flashes, night sweats, dryness, but it also plays a critical component in cardiovascular protection, bone health, blood vessels. So that also includes glucose metabolism and insulin metabolism. So there's also perks there from that standpoint as well too. I'm usually pretty transparent here. I'll be 45 next month. I'm on testosterone, estrogen, progesterone. I'm on an HGH peptide. I mean, I monitor my protein. I try to be good about water, but I also know that I live a lot on the 80-20 rule. Like if I can be pretty good from a nutritional standpoint 80% of the time, I'm not going to worry about the other 20%. I bet I have a bowl of ice cream 3 nights a week because it sounds good and I'm not going to deprive my body of the things I want. I probably, not unlike Krista, had a mom whose idea was a cup of coffee for breakfast. The sprinkled lettuce you put on tacos was a bowl of that was considered lunch for her, and a bowl of cereal was dinner. I think
Mm-hmm.
somewhere along the way I vowed like this is not how I view life at all. So it's also for me, how can I set a great example for my kids? I don't ever want I've got 2 boys and a girl. I don't ever want my daughter to hear me say, I'm fat or I can't eat that. If the kids want to go out for ice cream, I want to go out for ice cream with them because I want them to know that those are things that they can do. But I'm also going to teach them why protein is important, why vegetables are important, why hydration is important, so that they're educated to make their own decisions as well.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. Shara says, I've started hearing more about your peptides. Can you talk briefly about those?
So peptides is a really, really broad term that includes Samorlin and the HGH peptides, the semaglutides, the tirzepatides, which are the GLP-1s, are a peptide. Insulin is a peptide. There are blood pressure medications that are peptides. BPC, GHKCU, like there's a ton of peptides that exist out there, and they're just used for a variety of different things. But what they do is they are meant to turn on processes in your body to help support your body and how it functions, and for that specific function that we use it for.
I love that. Clear example. They're meant to turn on functions in the body for that specific. That's
Yeah.
really, really good.
Yeah.
I would say too, just for anyone on here, the blood testing just is so helpful. Like I just feel like that was just such a clarifying thing because I think in this world and space too, the part of us that wants to change our bodies or feels like happiness is on the other side of our weight loss or, is just in this game of self-improvement, self
Right.
whatever. It can be endless and there's can be so many different things that we hear about, find, discover, supplements, da 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 da.
Right.
Um, but when you get the blood work, or when my experience was when I got the blood work, I was like, oh, now I know I need to do. I talked to the doctor, and then we got me on the peptide protocol, where it's like, okay, I need to do from like a level of not only optimizing my health, but feeling better. And then also too, what I can do to take it to the next level, whether that's the peptides or whatever that was. Like it was like, this is my plan and this is what I'm doing. I'm not going to be buying any other supplements, any other things outside of what I know my body actually needs in this moment. So it was very clarifying for me. And it really helped me to just kind of clear the noise out because I was focused on what I needed to do based on my blood work.
Agreed. Like nobody checks blood, nobody does their results when everything's great, just to say, hey, here's where I look like when I feel fantastic. But there's always a great time because life is going to continue to evolve.
Yeah. I mean, my recent test, I was like, I was like talking to my Joy girl. You guys, I don't know if you know on the now you can get your cellular age. Dude,
Yeah,
I'm 8.5 years younger. That's
Nice.
awesome. Yo, I was like, am I the best that you've ever seen? She's like, I don't know, but am I the best? I was like, dude, this is crazy. It's probably all the
it's so cool.
everything. What other questions do you guys have? so we can answer. And then if not, we can do a little exercise before we go.
What to expect on consultation. The insight, what to expect when the results come back. I'm I'm assuming that you're already scheduled for your consultation. So I generally tell you expect a thorough review of what's off on the labs or what may be areas where we can focus on. And I also would expect to get a very broad, hey, your thyroid is off, but maybe we don't need to monitor it. Your testosterone is off. Like to get the full gamut of possibilities of things that could be supported, as well as being met with what you're ready for and what you're comfortable with.
Mhm. So usually with you get send in your blood panel and then they get the results and then the team reaches out to schedule your appointment. So it'll be like they'll schedule your appointment after you get the results. And then they work with men through Blokes. So there's Joy, which is the women's arm,
Okay.
and Blokes is the men's arm. You can get it through my link to Blokes. Blokes is great, especially for men with testosterone. Like I actually think the men thing is huge. So I think that's going to be great. Any other questions too before we do? Is there an optimization score that we should be aiming for? What do you guys think about that?
I always say no because it's where you feel your best.
Yeah.
I'll take testosterone, like general optimal testosterone levels for gals is 100 to 200. Uh, I feel really great 75 to 150. You push me above 200 and I don't feel great. But do I have gals who are like, I thrive at 250? Yes. And that's where that individualization and treatment really comes into place.
And then approximate cost per month for the services. So yeah, it really will depend on what your prescription protocol is because if you're getting one peptide to like five, it's just going to depend on that. So when you do it's 50% off the blood panels with my code in here. But once you do that and you talk to the doctor, you can kind of get an idea of what you're looking at and just see what can fit in your budget for what it is. And it'll depend on like sometimes you're like, I want to do it for this period, I don't. For me, it was helpful because again, like I had been spending so much money on different types of supplements all over the board that weren't really doing what I needed them to do. So it actually kind of cleansed and clarified my like shopping list.
Yep.
Um,
It's really easy to get all the outside noise from a supplement, or you get on a supplement website and you're like, yep, I need that and that and that and that. And before you know it, you're like, I'm taking 15 different supplements, but are they really doing anything for me?
for sure. It's my whole career. My whole career job is that. The uric acid question, how to balance your uric acid.
Generally, it's a sign of inflammation. So there's a whole bunch of other different things. Like I would want to know, what does cortisol look like? What's diet look like? Because there are some things dietary wise that can increase a uric acid level. Sometimes it can be genetic as well. So definitely a couple things from that perspective, though.
Yeah, beautiful. Okay. So we have in the chat, we have the link if you guys want to get the blood panel testing or find more information on any of the peptides or any of the things that I've done. I got the most comprehensive blood panel just because if I'm getting my blood drawn, I want to get everything done. So just so you know, I had the most comprehensive one. I felt like it was the most helpful. I felt like if I'm going to do it, I might as well get that information. Um, and yeah, I think that feels good for that, Melissa. I just wanted to leave you guys just with some, thoughts and kind of journal prompts or questions to think about just in this process. And I think for all of us, just as we embark on our health and wellness journey, it can be really helpful to just remember and kind of get clear on like, what is the goal that we're trying to achieve? Do we believe that transforming our body will help us be more successful, be more loved, be more accepted? Kind of like what do we feel like is on the other side of our transformation? And how can we give ourselves that before, or how can we see ourselves in that success or in that love even before we're in that? So just kind of getting clear, like in our minds. For me, I felt like success was on the other side of my body transformation. And I kind of had to like get clear about that and let that go. And then also too, how can you bring joy and play into this process? So how can you bring a little bit of levity and lightness into this, making it interesting and fun, approaching this with curiosity and being like, okay, cool, how can I optimize my health? How can I see what's out there? How can I make this fun and interesting? Like, how can I get excited about seeing my results? Because now I have a plan in place for how I'm going to improve my health and how I'm going to feel better and sleep better and all of these things. I think we can all kind of come in with this mindset that's very serious and that's very kind of like analytical and stressful and almost just like not approaching our bodies in this journey that we have in our bodies, in this journey that we have on earth with the fun and the play and the curiosity that we really can, because we're only in this body for this one lifetime. Why not make it something that we have a great relationship with? Why not have this like open dialogue about what's working and what's not? And just finding really relaxed and easy ways to support ourselves and feeling like our best self. And then for preferred time of day to test hormones, that's actually just really quick for that, Melissa, preferred time of day to test hormones.
I typically don't. Generally, like testosterone is going to be higher in the morning, but I like a morning draw because I like a fasted blood draw because that's when you're going to know what an insulin level looks like, a cholesterol. You're going to get a more accurate picture of a cortisol as well too. So there is no preferred time of day, but I always recommend at least once having a fasted panel first thing in the morning.
Beautiful. That's when I did mine too, which was great. Which was great. Okay, cool. So we have an email follow-up with link and recap for everything. If you need anything from me, let me know. Riley will have the information in the chat. I'm here to support. I have Almost 30 as the podcast that I do every single week free. And then I do my own retreats and courses and programs that you can find on my website. It's Krista. If we're not connected, I'm so grateful to be. And thank you so much, Melissa, and so much Riley, for everything that you do at Joy. It's just been such a pleasure to be in partnership with you and work with you through metamorphosis and all the things that I'm doing. So I appreciate you guys so much. And I hope you have a great rest of your weekend.
Thank you, Krista. Thanks for being vulnerable.
Oh, yes. I'll talk to you guys later.